because I did not think that did not even think about the impeller. And it kind of makes sense that, oh, Jesus. That might have been an issue.
We're Chris and Sandra. We started America's Great Loop in July of 2023, but it all started in 2022 when we bought a boat we named Gothataway. On a foggy May morning last year, we said goodbye to Port Dover and headed down Lake Erie through the Welland Canal and onto Lake Ontario. We had a summer of fun boat projects and explored Lake Ontario and the famous Canadian Heritage Canal System, the Trent Severn Waterway. We spent the spring of 2023 overhauling the galley of Gothataway, and we took off in July even though we had lots more to do. Join two not-so-young kids as we make our way around the 6,000-mile loop of North American waters.
So you're going to go outside, right?
Oh, you want me to check what's happening on the outside? What if I need to tell you to stop? Oh, it's just water, right?
And you just yell through the window, which is hopefully open.
It's open. Okay, I guess I'm taking my camera with me. We can always put the headsets on. Okay, I'm out here, Chris. So that narrows it down.
I'm not really sure what it tells me yet.
Well, it means that all things being equal, it'll pump out the hole in the wall, in the hull.
Say that again?
It means that it will pump out the hole, that something in between the pump and the hole is not working.
No, the pump to the hole is working.
Is the pump after the head? Like the pump...
Pump is right here on top of the tank.
So it sucks up.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to look at it. I suppose it could be pulling air, but... Right. Do we have some sort of long stick?
I have the stick that's we were using to prop up the hatch in the front.
Can I see it? We're not going to be able to use it after this. Right, so the pipe's empty.
The pipe is empty.
It means it's not up to the top of the tank. I'm trying to get a sense of the depth there. I need a marker or something, even just some tape.
I can look for tape. That's quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Double, maybe?
That's about 8 inches. So there's about 3 inches, 3.5 inches left of the tank. What is that really telling me? Contemplating whether it's just sucking a whole bunch of air.
There's an air leak, maybe?
Well, if there is, it would be on this intake pipe that I'm sitting here staring at.
Right. So maybe a cracked pipe?
Well, it looks pretty good. But that's not to say it couldn't.
Or at the fitting, like where it attaches?
That's possible. I don't know, I have to focus the pump.
And the only reason it worked when we sucked out of a bucket is that there's no load, really?
Well, there's a couple of possibilities going on here. One is that the intake tube is only working for the last 2 inches.
Oh, well... Oh, and we're just not filling up the last couple inches?
Yeah. The impeller is hooped in this thing. There's supposed to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh boy. 6 fins, and there's 2 that are torn, and then it goes missing, 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 missing. So I think there's 1 fin that's still in decent shape.
That's not good.
Out of, I think, 6.
But I mean, it's good that you've identified it.
which means I don't even know how this thing goes together.
Wouldn't it be just better to get a new pump entirely?
Possibly. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Right.
Because if I get this open, it may be that our other impeller fits, right?
Oh, from the engine?
It looks surprisingly similar, but I don't know. Yes. It's too small. So if we could find the impeller, I could probably put this back together, but we should definitely get a pump. Been working on the macerator, on the dump system for the waste tank over the side of the boat. I tested it before we left Florida, and it worked. And I think, based on how long we've gone without a pump out, it worked the first time I pumped while traveling offshore between along the Gulf Stream. But since then, no love. We turned it on and it just doesn't seem to do anything, to the point where I was getting worried about burning out the motor. So I ripped it apart yesterday, and I tried a whole bunch of things based on stuff that Sandra looked up on the internet. Made sure that the vent line was not plugged. Made sure that the outtake line wasn't plugged, and actually was able to pump water when the pump was sitting right inside the water. But eventually I decided to take it apart and found out that the impeller was completely done. There are two fins left on the impeller of 6, and it's just sad shape. I don't know, I'm holding it by the 2 fins that are left. One of them is halfway torn off, the other one is halfway torn off. So this impeller is almost done. So having identified the problem, I went to the only marine store in this, whatever it's called, Marsh Landing is where we're at. And surprisingly, I was able to buy this. And the story was, I went in there and I asked her, and she said, oh, we just sold our last macerator pump a couple of days ago. Some guy's toilet stopped working and he had family coming over. And I guess his head stopped working, not his toilet. And so he didn't have anything. And she showed me what they had for impellers, and none of them matched. And finally she said, well, let's take a look at the stuff that had the packaging, its packaging damaged in I think it was Hurricane Dorian. And we went through that, and sure enough, there was this impeller that seems to match. It's a Johnson. I don't think that matters necessarily. It seems to be identical in every other way. So we'll give it a shot. Now, I have a Jabsco, and pretty ugly. It's an old Jabsco. When I looked for it, I forget, I think it's an 18950, and mine has 4 zeros on the end. I can tell you it's 18590-0000. And when I looked on the internet, I couldn't actually find a manual for the 0000 model. I found it for all the other more recent iterations of this model, but I couldn't find it for this one, which tells me this is pretty old. And on the newer ones, it turns out that the shredder head is connected with a lock nut and washer, whereas this one, it's actually it's threaded into the assembly, and you thread it on, thread it off, and there's a lock washer on the bottom. And I couldn't get it to break, like I couldn't get it to come off until I actually took the whole thing apart, which is why you can see the
internal, I forget, is this the stator or the rotor? I always get that wrong. I'm going to call it the rotor because it does rotate. I had to take this whole thing apart because on the newer models, you can actually take a little sight cap off the back, and there's a cut in the back of the shaft so that you can put a flat-bladed screwdriver here to hold the shaft, and then you just undo the lock nut. This one, you're supposed to immobilize the shaft somehow. I didn't have a tool. I don't know what tool they use to do it. So I had to get a bit creative, and I put a pipe wrench on this end, which might not be the best thing in the world, but that was the only thing I could do to get leverage. And then it came off pretty easily. So I'm going to have to clean this up. I'll just use some really fine grit emery paper. And then hopefully I have to clean the rest of it up. And then hopefully I'm going to be able to put this all back together. Because, yeah, many pieces here sitting in front of me. So hopefully I can get it back together. Hopefully this impeller works. And hopefully we can pump waste over the side. Nowhere have we found in the Bahamas so far that pumps waste tanks. So it's a bit of an issue. We'll see what we can do here. I think moving forward, I'm going to get a newer pump. I may get a 24-volt pump. And if this one still works, I'll put it in as a spare. And because I don't want to try and take this apart again. It was pretty ugly. And the newer ones sound pretty simple. Lesson learned, when you get an old piece of equipment working, think about what the replacement parts are. Because I did not think that did not even think about the impeller. And it kind of makes sense that, oh, Jesus. That might have been an issue. Just managed to drop this rubber gasket into the bilge, but at least I got it back. Not sure how much of this I'm going to be able to show. And so many jokes last night when people found out I was working on this. Because body elimination is so funny, unless you're the one working on it. Let me tell you. And the contact on this part of the motor was pretty black. So who knows? Hopefully it's going to work just that much better. Again, if I'm able to get it back together. Okay, first piece is reassembled. Oh, God, that hurt. Now, something tells me I need to get the orientation of the outtake right, because this is going to sit like that, and the port needs to be over here. So if I get this wrong, I think we clean this first. Yeah. Close quarters. Now, of course, I'm not able to replace any of the gaskets because I don't have a proper rebuild kit. So I'm trying to be really careful with the mating surfaces and the existing gaskets. However, so far so good. Assuming this is the way I want this, it is the way I want it, then the The bolts for the back end are opposite these two, which is important when I put the back plate on. Now, the back plate, man, this is really old. I bet you the newer ones are more sophisticated. Anyway, it's these spring-loaded, what do you call them, commutators? It's been a long time since I've studied any of this stuff. Anyway, I got to push them back in. So they're designed to, they carry the current, right? That drives the rotating part of the motor. And they're designed to expand as material wears off of them, right? So they're spring-loaded and they slide in. And they're really finicky to work with. I actually had this put back together once. I didn't have the part to put back in yet, so I had to disassemble it again. The other thing I asked for, and she was able to provide, was grease for the impeller. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned it, but I guess because it was open box, she sold it to me for $10, which, I'll be honest, in the Bahamas, seems like a steal. So upside down still looks like it's the right orientation. Exit valve's going that way. And then these rubber seals go back on, and hex nuts. Doesn't look like I've got any leftover parts. Oh, I do have a leftover part. Forgot to install the plate. This is the impeller housing plate. And of course, I should probably install the grinder. Otherwise, this was just a big waste of time. So now the impeller is actually resisting rotation, which is a good sign, because then it should build up pressure and pump waste. I will say, pulling the old generator out of here was probably the best thing I ever did, because there is no way I could have accessed this with the generator. The generator was right on top of this, and I would have had to have partially disassembled it, slid it out of the way. The batteries sit on top of this, but you can actually, and I slid the battery out of the way, which was pretty easy to do. Macerating and pumping overboard was banned in the Great Lakes in the 80s, I think Sandra said. So, given that this boat's a 91, I'm not sure if this was an add-on or if this was ever used, or it was used, obviously, because the impeller was dirty. I don't know how long ago, though. So, Sandra, I'm just going to pump some clean water overboard. Don't know if you heard me.
I'm not sure what you want me to do.
Absolutely nothing. Well, you can go take a look, but I don't think there'll be any problem. It was just water with soap in it.
Do you want to know if it's coming out?
Sure, but I'm pretty confident it did. Just going to put a clamp on each of the inlet and outlet hoses. Give it one more test. Okay, here goes. It's off. Yeah, it works now. Working in the engine room while fixing the macerator was pretty hot. Fortunately, I was able to track down the parts locally. Although, being outside of North America, I don't know how easy that's going to be all the time. Really makes me think about what we're carrying on the boat for spare parts. Thanks for watching. See you next time.